Hi everyone, welcome back to another webinar with FrankSense. I'm Brittany and I'll just be going through the chat and answering some of your questions. Today we are joined by the technical SEO consultant at Built Visible, Jose Hernando, who is going to demonstrate how to extract speed metrics and core web vitals using PageSpeed Insights API and JavaScript, hosted by SEO David Sottimano. So without further ado, let's get started.
Cool, welcome everyone. So we've got Jose Hernando today, the man, the myth, the legend, who's going to teach us about Node.js and JavaScript. We're going to take a break from Python. So let's find out a bit about him. Jose, where do you work? What do you do every single day?
So, hi everyone. So my name is Jose, and I am a technical SEO consultant at Build Visible. And my day-to-day is pretty much, working for medium to large-scale websites and helping them in their efforts to gain more organic traffic, basically, and more organic performance in general.
Cool. And why do you hate Python?
I don't hate Python. I think it's a great language, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the Python community. So no hate at all. Python people are our brothers and sisters, so no problem at all. But for me, I thought JavaScript looked much better for me. It suited my needs better in general. I kind of liked it. So yeah, no hate at all. Maybe some people hate JavaScript though. I have that feeling in the SEO community that there is some small hate for JavaScript.
I mean, I think everyone hates JavaScript, right? Even JavaScript programmers. So.
Yeah, probably, yeah. That's why TypeScript exists, no?
So Jose, have you always been a programmer?
No, not at all. So my background, so I studied economics back in the day, but I haven't used economics at all in my life. And then I rapidly switched to marketing and specifically digital marketing, and then started working in an agency short after that. So I don't have any background in computer science or development or anything like that. Everything has been sort of like on the go. And I haven't literally programmed apart from like, HTML, CSS a few years ago. JavaScript, I started pretty much last year doing it properly. So, well, properly, So yeah, not a programmer, I can tell you that.
Okay. Is HTML a programming language?
I'm not an expert, but I don't think so, right? It's sort of like semantic language, no? It's not really a programming language.
I'm just trying to trick you. Okay. Let's talk about your programming experience. So you don't have a background in programming. You started programming. You chose JavaScript. I mean, what was the reason why you started programming? Was there something like an event, anything that said, okay, I'm done. I'm going to learn how to program. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's probably like a few things. One that definitely influenced is the fact that we work with websites every day, SEOs. So and part of every website is JavaScript, or for most part websites, and you had this wave of heavily reliant websites reliant on JavaScript. So I didn't know anything about JavaScript, and I wanted to learn more about that. And then on the other hand, I was doing repetitive tasks all day, like classic, reporting, extracting data from platforms and downloading and crunching the data and all that. And I was thinking there has to be a better way. And I actually saw a lot of SEOs doing really good stuff doing programming, like not only with Python, which was what I thought I was going to be learning at the beginning, but with other like intermediary tools, like Nime, right? Like Paul Shapiro started, showing people how to do things with Nime. Yeah, and then obviously Hamlet was a big, proponent and advocate of automating things with Python. And I think, a big part of the community will always be thankful to him to show us the way in a way.
I definitely agree. Paul Shapiro and Hamlet did inspire me as well. So yeah, that's great. Cool. So what are we going to do today?
So I've basically built a script to extract field data metrics, field data from the PageSpeed API, as well as lab data. So everything speed related. And the reason why I've done this is because the old way of doing things was to use the PageSpeed API or the PageSpeed tool from Google to extract data from a few URLs. But it was so, yeah, it was really, really time consuming to do like one by one. And if you wanted to do a bunch of them, like 10 or 20, it will take you, a long time. And even though the tool is cool, you might rather.
You mean it's so easy? I would just open up 20 tabs and
exactly.
Put it in the URL. Like, I don't see the problem.
I mean,
I had nothing better to do with my day for just 5 hours.
No, I'm sure that is fun for a lot of people, but for the people that don't want to spend that much time, and they want to, have a normal life and go out for coffee and spend their day in different ways. That's what machines are for, like to do that job for us in a way. So I've basically built a script to do all that automatically, just putting the URLs in there and getting all the data back. So let me show you what I have for you today. So
one thing before we get into your script, because it sounds amazing. Why are we doing this? Why are we interacting as SEOs, as marketers with this PageSpeed API?
Yeah, so there are a few reasons. Probably one of the main reasons is that right now is in Core Web Vitals is in everyone's mind, right? Because in June they're gonna change the algorithm. They're gonna update the algorithm to care for these Core Web Vitals. And in order to know how do you score against these Core Web Vitals, you want to extract the data somehow to understand, are you okay before the update or not? And luckily, the PageSpeed Insights API, they give you that data specifically for the URLs that they have. So that is one of the main reasons. The other reason is that performance has always been important for site owners and for SEOs and development teams in general.
So Jose, let me ask you a quick question. So we've got the PageSpeed Insights API, right? But one of the things that we're worried about is these Core Web Vitals.
For sure.
Just get it from the BigQuery public database?
You can. Yeah, you can do that, but there are a couple of things. One is that, for me at least, there are a couple of things that I thought the PageSpeed API was better. First one is that BigQuery can be a little bit scary using SQL and stuff like that, and it can be a little bit daunting, and not everyone might be willing to do that kind of digging. And second is that they give you origin data, right? Like they aggregate all the data from all the URLs from your domain and they put it into the database, and you can extract that database. And there are that is cool, but if you want to go to the individual URLs, you cannot get it that way, as far as I know, as far as I've been able to extract. And that's where the PageSpeed API, PageSpeed Insights API shines. Like, okay, if I have the data for that specific URL, I'll be able to extract it. So that's why I went this direction more than the other direction.
Cool. So we need to get ready for this Core Web Vitals update. We have this PageSpeed Insights API. It gives us, like you said, basically our metrics for how fast our page is, but critically, it also gives us the crux Chrome user experience report metrics, which we're going to be weighed on because it's going to be a ranking factor in the upcoming update in June. Yeah. Hopefully they push that back, right? So look, that sounds good. Let's go ahead and let you take over and show the world what you've done.
Sweet. Yeah, sounds good. All right. So let me see if I can share my screen. So, okay. There you go. Okay. Right. All right. So, so this is the script that I've built, but no need to panic, anyone. It's just a bunch of code. It's just like letters in there in reality. So I thought before going into the nitty gritty of the script, and instead of going function by function, I'm going to show you first, what kind of data you can get and compare it to what you can get from the actual PageSpeed Insights tool, right? Because I feel like if I show you this, everyone would understand what this is. You know, like if you go to the PageSpeed Insights API, you can see the data for one specific URL, which is all this, you know, like the field data and the lab data for one specific URL, right? So for my script specifically, you can get the same data, but divided in two sections. You can get the field data, which is just a CSV with the URLs that you input for each metric, you know, like first contentful pane, first input delay, largest contentful pane, cumulative layout shift, and the date of the extraction. And then you will also have the lab data, which is data from the API as well by using Lighthouse. And in this case, the metrics that you can extract are time to first byte, first contentful pane, largest contentful pane, cumulative layout shift, time to interactive, speed index, total blocking time, max FID, and the page size of the website. Okay, so that is essentially what you get. You get two CSVs, one with the crux data, with the lab data, the core web vitals data, which is this one, and then another CSV with the lab data, which is all the other speed metrics that you can get from the API. That's it. That's all it does. Nothing else for now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it looks like you're able to go ahead and query quite a few different URLs and pull back the metrics that you need in a nice simple way, which is a CSV. Where we open up what we do every single time, right? We always end up in Excel or Google Sheets. So it's good to have it there.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can do whatever you want with that data. And as we were saying before, you know, like if you were to do this work individually, you'll have to literally take the URL, put it here, analyze it, and then wait, you know, 10, 20, 30 seconds until you get all the data back. And, you know, that is great, but I think it's a massive waste of time. So if you want, what I can do is show you how to run the script specifically, and I can share with you and with everyone that has joined today how to run the script. Does that sound good? I hope it does.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. So
before you go ahead though, okay, so we're gonna run the script here, right?
Yeah.
Just let's just reiterate to everyone, what programming language are they looking at here?
Yeah, so this is JavaScript. This is all JavaScript. Big JavaScript.
I just do that. Okay. And what IDE are you using? So what's your editor?
Yeah, so my code editor is Visual Studio Code. So this is a really simple visual editor. You can download it for free, you know, and for most of the tutorials that you will see out there, it's that is the editor that you will use, that you will see. So really simple. Yeah, and just so everyone is in the right page, I'm using Node. So JavaScript has sort of like, let's call it like two versions. You have like the browser version, which is what your browser executes, right? And everyone will use on their websites. And then this is the backend version. So I'm using it in my computer, and I'm using this program called Node. And in this case, I'm using version 16, but you can run many versions, okay? But you don't have to like care a lot about that. Just make sure that it's above version 14, that's all. Right, so after that, once you download the script, I'm just gonna run the script first to show you how it works, and then I'll do like step by step how you can do it in your machine and replicate it so you can use it on your own time. Sound good? So once, imagine that like I've done everything, all the data here, and in reality, you just need to care for two things. One, that you have URLs in this urls.csv file, all the URLs that I want to know the data from. That's it, just a CSV with URLs, done. And then the other thing that you need is an API key. In this case, I already have my API key from Google, which I'll show you later how you get, but that is it. And then I'll just do npm start, and the script will start running, okay? And in this case, you will see a few messages popping up just to tell you that something is happening. In this case, it's just telling you that a chunk of URLs has been sent to the API, and the script is just waiting for the PageSpeed Insights API to respond back with all that data. And the moment that the data is ready, you will see all the results in this folder, in this results folder, and a final message with the amount of time that it took for everything. Oh, hang on a minute. You know what happened is that because I have my CSV open, it doesn't let me. So let me remove that folder and let me run it again. That is it. And now it will run fine because I had my files open and it's telling me, no, you cannot re-edit a file that you're editing. So yeah, that's why for the script to get the data back. And in the meantime, if you want, I think it's gonna be like 20 seconds tops. So there you go. So now I have all the results back, and I have my field data, which is what I was showing you before. All the core web vitals metrics. So first input delay, largest contentful paint, and cumulative layout shift for each of the URLs that I could get data from, and the test CSV, which is the URLs run by Lighthouse with all the speed metrics that you can get. That's it, pretty much. That's all you need. Does that make sense? I hope so. Cool. So there are a couple of things that you should know before running the script. Like one of the things that you should know is that even though you don't know how to run JavaScript or anything like that, there are a couple of modifiers that you could do, because at the moment there are two things that you could change. One is the type of viewport that you can use to do the API call. In this case, I'm using mobile. So you just go into the API request where you put your API key, and then you put mobile, but you can also put desktop. And you could run the test and get field data from the desktop version. And the other thing that the script does, I'm gonna change it back to mobile. And the other thing that you could do is go to index.js and go to the end. And because Lighthouse will give you, it can vary, the data can vary massively between test and test. So you can do multiple tests to see, how much it varies. So by default is just one test. But in here, I could say, okay, just do 2 tests for me. And in this case, let me delete this results folder and then save the file, and I can rerun it again, and it will rerun with the new settings, which is, mobile in this case, and then twice. So we'll do 2 tests.
So this is great, Jose. I want to go through it again here. If I want to use desktop or mobile, where do I go again?
So you go to the API request. In this case, you would see a variable here called device. And in here, you just change mobile from mobile to desktop.
API request.js, and then the device variable, const device. And I can change that to either desktop, mobile, or tablet, was it?
Yeah, you can do tablet as well. Yeah, you can do tablet as well.
Okay, and so what you mentioned was really interesting as well. So sometimes you'll have results that vary. And so you programmed in essentially the ability to loop the test again. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So it just waits for user input to say how many times you want the test to run. And in this case, you would see in the logs that the 2 tests were run for the set of URLs that I had, which in this case, it was 10 URLs, and it took 1 minute. And that's it. And because I'm running 2 tests, and when you get the data back, you say, oh, right, I have two tests, right? So if I go to my results test.csv, I will have every URL repeated twice because it ran twice, right? So for example, in this case, bbc.com has a time to first byte of 62 milliseconds. if I go down, I see another bbc.com entry with 35.1 milliseconds. And I was like, oh, okay. So there is a big variance between those. So what I've done is I created another formula, which essentially just says, okay, just do the average, right? In this case, I've used the median value, and it creates another CSV with all the URLs that you have in your urls.csv file, and it does the median value, so you have the average between the tests that you run.
So that was a pretty big difference there for the that was for the bbc.com homepage.
Yeah.
Like time to first byte is measured in milliseconds there.
Yeah.
And that was, I think it was 48 and 60.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. So if we're gauging ourselves on that, it's great that you're taking median. So I'm kind of wondering myself, before I start using this script, which looks fantastic, if I should be doing more than 2 tests for all of my URLs, because that was, I mean, that's a big degree of change. So
it is.
What would you recommend that our users and our viewers change that setting to?
Yeah, so I've run it with really crazy settings, but I would say if you really want to have like a really good gauge of what a mobile user with a mid-tier CPU in a 3G connection, which is what Lighthouse uses, to get a really good result, I would say a minimum of 3, maximum of 5, I would say. Because that way you have a lot of values in between and the median value can be more accurate. I've done this test for 10 different tests. And what you would see normally is that one of the times or the brackets is is the strongest one. And then you would see a few results at the end, like at the end of the tail in a way, if you had like an Instagram. So that's why I also chose median instead of average, because if I was to choose like the mean or the average, it would have pushed the median value really to the tail, and I didn't like that at all. So yeah, so if you run the test, run it at least 3 times. If you're gonna be like if you want really accurate results, just do 5. But also what I would say is that if you're running this for like more than 20 or 30 URLs, 3 is probably the max that you want to run, because I was running a test with like 6,000 URLs and it took me probably like around like 3 hours to run a couple of tests. So yeah, so it depends on the amount of URLs that you have in your backlog. Yeah, just use 2 or 3 and it should be fine.
Got it. Okay, so we have that's basically what I need to configure it. So I can change the device and I can change the amount of times that the test is repeated.
Yeah. And
can I just see you run the script one more time?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna clear my console, and this time, let's go crazy. Like I'm gonna do 3 tests. Okay, instead of 2 or 1, I'm just gonna go 3, and you will see each time, the log saying, oh, you're gonna run this 3 times. And in the meantime, I can tell you, oops, sorry. Just gonna remove that. And that should be fine. Whoops. What is going on?
Welcome to live programming, folks.
Yeah. All right, hang on a minute.
We've tried things a million times the day before, and yet something seems to go wrong.
Yeah. All right. So is it because someone else is using my API key? I know it's tablet. So that is it. It's because tablet is not a strategy, is it? It's either mobile or desktop.
I thought tablet was, but I never use tablet for anything. So mobile, desktop, and generally the things I care about. Actually, mobile is the only thing I personally worry about. But
yeah, that's it. I think that I saved it as tablet, and when I changed it to mobile, I didn't save it, and now it's saved. So now it's running.
Okay, cool.
Fun times, fun times. So yeah. So in the meantime, I think there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention, and one is that if you code in Python, you would normally see this kind of syntax anyway, like you import modules and then you use the modules. So it's not that far off in between like Python world and JavaScript world. The only main difference for me is that you use the brackets instead of the indentation, which is like probably like the main difference. But apart from that, I found JavaScript really, really simple and yeah, easy to understand. Probably the people that would say that about Python as well. But it is a language to love, not to hate, for sure. Cool. I think it's like it's gonna be another like 20, 30 seconds to get the final script, and we'll get more accurate medians than we did before.
It sounds like a good time to talk about Node.js and some of the differences with Python. So Node.js, as we talked about before, is essentially JavaScript and runs on the server side, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us about Node.js in kind of the context of why is it different from Python out of the box? Like I heard about it's asynchronous. Could you explain that?
Yeah. So as far as I understand, I'm probably gonna make like a lot of mistakes here, but as far as I understand,
that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as I understand, the main difference is that JavaScript runs in the main thread, right? Like there's only one thread, and in order to make things run more smoothly, you have this sort of concept of asynchronous events, right? Like Node.js is an event-driven language or runtime. So what happens is that in order to wait for something to happen, then you need to sort of like tell the script to either stop and wait for things to happen before you get the data. And then when that happens, then you get the data back. Whereas Python, it is multi-threaded as far as I understand. So you can use like, it can run process in parallel as far as I understand. And there is no concept of like asynchronous programming in that sense, right? Like you don't have to tell it literally just wait for this data until you get it back, right? Like it's not like JavaScript where you can say, this function is asynchronous, wait for this data and then do something, right? Like in this case, like we do here, like this function is asynchronous, wait for this data to finish and then do something, right? Is that how it is?
Yeah,
maybe you know better.
Yeah, definitely. Like Node.js out of the box is meant to be asynchronous, and so we've got that event loop, right? And so the whole point is that Node.js is really, really good, like you said, with this one thread, and it doesn't have to wait. It can keep doing things. So as we throw things at Node.js, it's sort of like a waiter at a restaurant, right? Where a waiter at a restaurant is not just staying still. It's sort of like if he was going to a table, taking an order, giving it to the chef and waiting for that order to be completed. Well, that's really slow and useless. But this waiter's not doing that. This waiter's taking an order, he's going to another table, he's delivering at the same time. So it's basically, that's the event loop. Now Python, I'm not the best in Python, but there are some asynchronous packages now, and I've seen it work, especially when it comes to HTTP requests. So I think Python is getting there as well. Hopefully the next Python webinar, they'll explore a bit more of that. But either way, I think your script is done.
Yeah. So the script has finished now, and as you can see, there are a couple of messages. One is that it has run 3 tests for the 10 URLs that we had, and it took 1 minute and 30 seconds to run all those 10 URLs. In this case, like 30 URLs, because it's like 10 URLs 3 times. So then you go to your results folder, and in here you can see, your field data that you only take once. And in this case, these are the URLs that had some field data. And then in the results test, you'll see the 30 URLs in here, because it's 31 because the header is also 1. So all the 30 URLs in there. And the cool thing about this is that in the same case that I was showing you before, BBC in this case had 93 time to first byte. and 41 for the second test, and 39 for the third test. So as you can see, like, yeah, like a lot of variability. That's why doing one test is really risky, because imagine if I had stopped on here, I might think that my time to first byte is really, really bad. But it's not like that. So then if I look into my median file, I'll just look at here and say, okay, on average, you know, the time to first byte is 41 milliseconds, which is quite good. It's quite good. So yeah, so I would definitely encourage anyone that is running the script to run it at least a couple of times, if not 3 times, if you can, to get a more accurate view of how fast your URLs really are. So yeah.
Cool, that looks great. That looks really, really handy.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Anything else you want to mention about your script?
I mean, the main difference that I would say is that if you are learning Node, you'll probably see a lot of tutorials doing a different syntax than this one, because this syntax specifically is what is called ES modules, right? Which is one of the latest updates in the Node world, right, or the JavaScript world. You would probably see people doing like const and then doing this and then say require moment.js, right? Require moments, and that's it. Don't get intimidated by that kind of syntax, because it's exactly the same thing. You know, it is. If you can start doing that, that's great. But you know, just learn that there are different ways of doing things. And if you're doing Python, maybe use this kind of syntax, because you probably feel more comfortable importing and exporting things than doing requires and things like that. Also, learning about ES6 modules has helped me a lot about learning more about React, for example, that in React they use ES modules all the time, and the syntax is the same. So if you are dealing with JavaScript-based websites like React, knowing ES6 syntax is definitely helpful. So yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who's new to programming and just saw the script, you might be feeling overwhelmed, and we completely understand.
Yeah.
So, Jose, just as kind of like a parting word for anybody who's never used Node.js before, never programmed, doesn't have Node.js installed on the computer, has never used a terminal before, how would you get them up and running to do this in the quickest way possible so that they can use your script?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, if you want to get into programming, and I'm here to advocate for JavaScript, so go to JavaScript, you know, like don't look into Python that much. What I would say is like, don't panic, you know, like everyone started their journey somewhere, you know, like me a year ago, didn't know anything about programming realistically. So, you know, don't be discouraged because you don't know much. You just have to start. So don't worry about it. The second thing is like, if you want to run this script and you have like zero idea, what I would say is, you know, download Node, which is really easy. You can just like download this version, 14 version, and then the code editor, VS Code, and then download the script from GitHub, which I will is shared in the RS tutorial series from RankSense. And then from then, just, you know, install the scripts. You have the README here to follow. It's really clear instructions on how to do it, and then you can run it, and happy days, you know. Yeah, I would say, yeah. I would say don't give up, you know, don't give up on not doing programming because it looks really complicated. It might be, some things might be complicated, but anyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it for sure.
Perfect, sounds good. So I think this is a good time right now to open up the floor in case anybody has any questions. So if anybody is watching right now, excuse me, and you'd like to ask Jose a question, please feel free to do that in the chat. Okay, so we've got one from Casey. Once you have this data, what would be a good way to present it so that it's client facing? Spreadsheets aren't always easy for clients to understand what's being presented to them. Fair question, great question. Jose?
Yeah, great question. For me, what I would say is you can present it using Google Sheets and Data Studio. That's probably my go-to combo. Just get a Google Sheet, put the data there, and then have a Data Studio, open a Data Studio dashboard, and just import the data, and then you can put it there. That would be my go-to, and that's basically how I would have done it. Also, if you don't feel comfortable with that option, you can always use Excel and do it in like a more presentation version. Just do the graphs in Excel and then just put it into a presentation or a document and just share it with the client.
Okay, so I'll give you a question here. Is there anything that what are the problems that you faced when dealing with the PageSpeed API? Or, was it easy? Is there something that we should know if we're going to program our own scripts?
So, to be honest, it was pretty straightforward. I think the only like difficulty in a way was to understand the massive response from the server, because I actually have like a really small representation on how this works. So it's basically you ask for URLs from Google servers get the lab data and the Lighthouse data, and then they give you a massive response back, a massive response back. And actually I have an example here that I can show you, which is this massive, 8,000 lines of object, back from the API code, right? So I think at the beginning it's a little bit overwhelming to understand what data is what, but if you sort of like narrow it down to a few things, at the end of the day, there are just like three main properties, right? Loading experience, which is field data, origin loading experience, which is field data from the origin, and Lighthouse results. So as long as you decouple, where the data is coming from and what it means, then it should be fairly easy. But at the beginning, it was like a little bit tough to understand where all the data was coming from and what I really needed in that sense. And then the other challenge that I got was that I wanted to run the request in parallel, and because at the beginning I was just doing one by one, sort of like what the tool from Google does, but it was really lengthy, and making the parallel request work, it took me a little while, but yeah, in the end it worked fine. So.
Okay, so I missed a few questions here. There were two questions from Rebecca. And the very first one was, does scripting like this in Node.js help you as an SEO when you're looking at websites using JavaScript?
Yeah, so I mean, the only reason why I went into JavaScript is like, not the only reason, but like one of the main reasons was to understand JavaScript a little bit better. And even though there are a few nuances in between the Node world and the JavaScript world, it definitely helped me a lot to understand JavaScript in the browser. Because the foundation is pretty much the same. Like there are different APIs, but it is foundationally the same thing. And even things like small things like JSON LD, for example, to do schema, understanding the concept of like objects and arrays and stuff like that, it kind of like clicked after I understood JavaScript a little bit better, and Node.js in this case. So yeah, I would definitely say yes.
Okay, I'm going to switch here for a second. We've got a question from Brian. How did you get the spreadsheet view in VS Code?
There is an extension. Yeah, it is a small extension called, I think it's called Edit CSV. Yeah, there you go, Edit CSV. Yeah, just install that. It's really simple. Edit CSV. Yeah, really small. And you can just visualize everything like in the GIF here. So yeah, super simple.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Rebecca's first question, and I'm going to ask a question about this because, okay, so we have Node.js, which is JavaScript on the server side, right? And then we have JavaScript kind of in the wild where we're using to create the DOM to essentially interact with the web pages. Okay. Does that mean that I can use any Npm module? And can you explain a bit about Npm, actually? can I use any NPM module in a web page?
So you can, as far as I understand, you can for the most part. You just have to import it in a different way, right? Like you have to, you need a, in the same way that you have in an index HTML, you have a script tags. So you have to like download it from a CDN somewhere in order to get that data back. So I think for the most part, you can use the modules that you have in NPM as part of your browser experience. The only problem that I would say there is that JavaScript in the browser has many difficulties, because there are many browser vendors that they use different standards, and therefore you have to account for every version that your user might use. Like for example, if you have Internet Explorer, version 6, some things might not work the way that you've programmed it. So you need to account for those versions while you do it. In Node.js, it's not like that. You just have different versions from the same thing, and it is the same thing. And NPM is the node package manager. So in order to run scripts, you need to, like, NPM is looking at this file basically, which is just a set of instructions to tell the script what it needs to run. And in this case, if I'm installing modules, I have this dependencies object that says, oh, I'm using these modules in order to run the script. So yeah, it's just a centralized way to extract all the modules that you need to run the script. Does that make sense? I feel like too many words.
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, there's a lot to learn here, a lot to take in. I know we're not going to answer the questions of the universe today in this webinar, but hopefully we've given everybody a bit of an appetite to, go further, learn a bit of Node.js, of course, be able to run this amazing script so you save lots of time with their PageSpeed Insights API calls, right? So I think I don't have any other questions up here and down the QA unless I've missed something, and I'm very sorry about that. But I think this is a good time to say, well, wrap it up. So we have our lovely team from RankSense that I think want to tell you about the next webinar.
Hi, everyone. So I would just like to tell you a little bit more about RankSense and what we do here. So RankSense is an SEO solution that runs on Cloudflare, and using Google Sheets, you can implement SEO changes on thousands of pages with just a few clicks. No developers required. RankSense can monitor your site for SEO issues, track the activity of search engine bots that visit, and automatically create meta descriptions using the power of artificial intelligence. So if you would like an extended free trial, get in touch with us at support@ranksense.com. So we mentioned it a little bit earlier in the chat, but you all will be receiving an email with a recording of this webinar, and it will also be uploaded to our RankSense YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. Go subscribe, you'll instantly get notified of our newest uploads. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter. We post tutorials usually every Thursday, and you can go and check out Jose's from today and ones from the past. And just thank you so much for joining. I hope you really enjoyed it and learned. Thank you also to our guests and to our host for joining us. You guys did a great job.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all, and have a nice day.